Bruno threw a piece of iron at the barbed wire fence. Surprisingly, the barbed wire fence crackled. An iron wall carrying an electric current had divided the two boys into two separate worlds. One in hell, one in heaven. And yet, two children from different backgrounds and circumstances became each other's only playmate. But the boy outside the wire fence would also pay a heavy price for this. The boy's name was Bruno. Before coming to the camp, Bruno lived in a big city. Every day after school, he was like a free bird spreading his wings with friends and flying home happily. As soon as Bruno got home, he saw the servant moving furniture. Mother came down the opposite staircase and told him some good news. It turned out that Ralph, Bruno's father, had been promoted as a German officer during World War II. Ralph had now been promoted to commandant. He would be assigned to a specific military camp responsible for managing the imprisoned Jewish people. The whole family would also follow their father to the camp. On the night before their departure, colleagues from the unit and close friends held a farewell party for Ralph. Bruno stood frozen on the upper floor, watching the crowd dancing in a grand hall, not knowing if he could adapt to the new living environment after leaving home. His little friends had said goodbye to Bruno in their own way, and so the whole family boarded the train to the camp. After 3 days and 3 nights of longue distance travel, they finally arrived at the location designated by the superiors. Faced with the gloomy and soulless walls, Bruno seemed a little disappointed. As soon as the servant helped him unpack his luggage, Bruno climbed onto the window's sill to look outside. Through the gap, his clear, innocent eyes saw the barracks in the distance. He hurried to the kitchen to ask his mother if he could go over there to play. Furthermore, Bruno also discovered something strange. Everyone inside was wearing striped pajamas. Just as his mother was about to explain to Bruno, a servant carrying vegetables walked in. Seeing that he had interrupted the conversation between the madam and the young master, the servant immediately apologized. Mother quickly gestured for him to bring the vegetables inside, and only then did the servant dare to enter. As the servant was about to leave, Bruno suddenly noticed that he too was wearing striped pajamas. Carrying his questions, Bruno went to his father. He didn't understand why the people in the barracks wore striped pajamas while working. Unexpectedly, his father said, "Those people you see, to be honest, they can't even be considered people." After hearing this, Bruno became even more confused. Mother suddenly walked in. After overhearing the conversation at the door, she told Bruno that this was where his father worked, that children were not allowed in, and told him to go back to his room for now. Mother promised to find him a new playmate in a little while. Mother questioned Ralph about why there was a servant from the other side in the house, but the common chose to remain silent with no one to play with. Bruno looked very bored, even having to play both sides when playing chess, so lonely that he played chess with himself. His dream was to become an explorer, flying freely like a bird. But now he was like a bird trapped in a cage. By chance, Bruno discovered a small door in the backyard. Curiosity drove him to go through it. When he wanted to explore this land further, his mother unexpectedly stopped him in time and motioned for him to leave this place quickly. While the family was having lunch, Bruno secretly watched the servant peeling potatoes. Father scolded Bruno for his unauthorized exploration, and the servant also seemed to be secretly listening to their conversation. So that the children would not neglect their studies, Father decided to hire a tutor to teach them. After lunch, Bruno laid dejectedly under a tree to cool off. Not far away, the lieutenant was helping his father wash the car. He walked straight up to him and asked if the lieutenant could help him find a tire. It turned out Bruno wanted to make a swing to play on. After hearing this, the lieutenant looked to the side and called out, "You there!" He motioned for the servant to come, but the servant walked very slowly and weakly. The lieutenant shouted loudly, "Hurry up!" Only then did the servant hurry over. The lieutenant ordered him to take the young master to find a tire. And so, under the servant's guidance, Bruno followed him to a warehouse in the backyard. As the servant bent down to search for a tire, Bruno noticed a window and many ideas began to form in his mind. But before he could think of a plan, the servant had already chosen a tire for him. Finally, on the 3rd day at the camp, Bruno had his own new toy. Suddenly, a plume of black smoke appeared in the sky. As he stood up to get a better look, Bruno accidentally fell off the swing. Just as he hit the ground, he vaguely saw someone running towards him. It turned out that after Bruno fell, the Jewish servant had helped him up and had also thoughtfully bandaged his wound. But the naive Bruno asked the servant if he would die from losing too much blood. The servant told him it was just a small wound and there was no need to go to the hospital. After hearing some medical terms he didn't understand, Bruno curiously asked what the servant used to do for a living. Unexpectedly, this servant used to be a doctor. Bruno joked that his skills must not have been very good for him to end up here peeling potatoes. The servant's eyes suddenly welled up with tears. Perhaps only an innocent child could think of such a reason. While the two were talking, Mother suddenly returned. Seeing the bandage on her son's knee, Mother realized Bruno had fallen. Knowing that the servant had bandaged his wound, Mother froze for a moment. Seeing her son alone with a Jewish person, Mother quickly gestured for Bruno to go to his room first. After a moment of hesitation, she still said 2 words to the servant. "Thank you." As soon as he heard that, the servant could hardly believe his ears. First time he had felt respect from a German. Seeing that it had been almost a week at the camp, Bruno still seemed very bored. He thought that when the tutor came, things would be a little more interesting. But unexpectedly, the teacher didn't tell stories of exploration, only talking about the history of Germany's development. His 12-year-old sister listened intently while 8-year-old Bruno was distracted. The teacher even gave him a book about German history to read, a book that Bruno absolutely couldn't read. Only the place behind the door in the backyard could stimulate his interest. Bruno once again secretly ran through there. He went to the warehouse, opened the window and then climbed out. Looking at the vast, dense forest, Bruno felt like a free little bird again. He happily crossed the monkey bridge, holding a wooden stick and whipping the young grass, playing a war game by himself. After crossing a small ditch, Bruno finally reached the farm he had longed for. But the barren land inside and the lush green foliage outside created a stark contrast. Bruno sat down and noticed a boy under the barbed wire fence. Eager to find a playmate, he boldly stepped forward to say hello. But the boy looked back inside wearily. He only saw the imprisoned Jewish people working. Seeing no guards, the boy dared to talk to Bruno. Turned out the boy's name was, and he was also 8 years old like Bruno. After getting to know each other, Bruno wanted to invite him to his house to play, but asked if he had brought any food. Bruno said no, and then asked if was very hungry and nodded. Bruno didn't understand why he asked for food as soon as he opened his mouth. He was only interested in the number Onel's clothes, even thinking it was a game number. Just as Bruno was about to ask him what game he was playing, the siren in the labor camp suddenly blared. Hurriedly pushed his wheelbarrow back. Although their first meeting came and went in a hurry, Bruno felt as if he had discovered a new continent. As soon as he got home, he started looking for toys. Knowing that wanted to eat, he even secretly took some chocolate from the dining table. But when Bruno went to the farm again, he didn't seem. The next day, his mother wanted to invite him to go shopping in town. But Bruno immediately refused because now he only wanted to go find Shmuel to play. Seeing his mother drive away, he immediately ran towards the farm. Luckily, he met the boy under the barbed wire fence again. This time, Bruno asked about the striped pajamas, but said he also didn't know why everyone wore clothes like that. Moreover, he didn't like the soldiers inside because the soldiers had taken their clothes. But Bruno was completely the opposite, because his father was a soldier. His father's image in his heart was that of a very important soldier whose job was to make everyone's life better. Taking the opportunity, Bruno also asked about the black smoke in the sky, adding that the smell was very unpleasant. Unaware thought they were burning old clothes. Seeing that Bruno hadn't brought any food again, seemed a little disappointed. Unexpectedly, Bruno invited him to his house for a meal. Pointed at the barbed wire fence, but Bruno thought it was to prevent wild animals from getting in. When he learned from that it was to prevent people from getting out, Bruno curiously asked why. Shmuel said, "Because I am a Jew." However, with just the phrase "a Jew," the 2 young children did not know the specific reason. Before leaving, Shmuel hoped that Bruno could come again tomorrow and bring him some food. During the lesson, the new tutor happened to be teaching about how the Jewish people had brought a destructive catastrophe to Germany during the World War. So Bruno asked the teacher a question. "There are good Jewish people too, right?" The teacher replied, "If you can find a good Jew, then you will be the greatest explorer in the world." The teacher's answer sounded profound, but for an 8-year-old Bruno, he did not understand the cruelty of war and the truth of history. The next day, Bruno fulfilled his promise and brought delicious bread for Shmuel. He threw the ball inside the barbed wire fence, motioning Farrell to play catch with him. But Shmuel immediately threw the ball back through the gap and asked Bruno not to throw it in anymore. Then Shmuel hid fearfully under a rock, afraid of being discovered by the guards in the labor camp. Bruno asked, What's wrong? Don't you want to play ball? It was just that this action would surely get brutally beaten. But Bruno was still lost in the game number. As the assembly siren sounded, pushed his wheelbarrow back again. This made Bruno feel very disappointed. His mother had just returned home when she saw Bruno coming back with the ball. He quickly explained that the ball had rolled away, then hurried back to his room. Just then, the unpleasant smell wafted in. Unexpectedly, the lieutenant said, "Burning them smells even worse, doesn't it?" She asked again, "What?" Wasn't until the madame voiced her suspicion that the lieutenant realized he had misspoken. Mother stared in horror at the black smoke not far away. She knew that place was a prison for Jewish people. She just never imagined her husband would do such cruel, inhumane things. That night, Mother went to confront Ralph. He immediately realized the lieutenant had misspoken. Ralph hurriedly explained to his wife that this was a state secret that not even family could be told. He had sworn an oath to the flag that he was doing this for the benefit and future of the fatherland. But his wife could not accept such a cruel method. She screamed at Ralph's actions until her voice was. Just as Ralph was about to comfort his wife, she screamed, "Stay away from me." Bruno didn't know why they were fighting. Bruno only came in to remind them that his grandfather had arrived for a visit. The next evening, the lieutenant who had revealed the secret was called to the dinner table. Ralph started the conversation, and directly questioned him until he was embarrassed and awkward. It wasn't until the servant poured wine and accidentally knocked over the glass that the lieutenant found an opportunity to vent his anger. The lieutenant cruelly dragged the servant outside and beat him. His wife heard the tragic cries and gestured for Ralph to do something. Unexpectedly, the commandant chose to ignore it. Before going to bed, Bruno asked his sister why their father didn't stop the servant from being beaten. Unexpectedly, his sister said that was what the Jew deserved. It turned out she had long been deeply influenced by the history of the war, facing the race that harmed the national interest, hating Jewish people to the bone. When Bruno asked if their father was a good person, his sister replied, "We should be proud of father, especially now that he is working to make the country strong again." After last night's incident, Mother was sleepless all night, her face gaunt. She could not believe her husband would let a subordinate beat a servant to death. And yet he chose to act as if he saw nothing. At this point, Bruno also began to realize that he and Andel were from two completely different worlds. As his sister had said, they were not friends, but enemies. After lunch, Bruno happened to see Shmuel's figure in the dining room, but he still kindly went up to say hello. It turned out hands were small, so he was sent here to polish the wine glasses. Bruno saw him staring at the cakes, so he casually took a piece and gave it to Shmuel, immediately gobbled it down. Unexpectedly, the lieutenant walked in at that moment. He had found another Jew to vent his anger on. Facing the lieutenant's furious face, a frightened said the cake was given to him by his friend Bruno. As soon as he heard this, the lieutenant immediately questioned Bruno if he knew this Jew. Bruno said he didn't. He said the boy was already eating when he came in. He said he had never seen him before. Unexpectedly, at the crucial moment, Bruno lied against his conscience. The lieutenant motioned Farrell to quickly clean the glasses, saying he would be back in a moment. Back in his room, Bruno immediately regretted what he had said. But when he went downstairs to look Farrell, he found that the person cleaning the glasses had been replaced by a female servant. Bruno went to the farm to find him to apologize, but he just couldn't find any sign of a sunny afternoon. Bruno noticed many officers had come to his house. He only saw them saluting each other with a military salute, after which the group went to the military camp screening room. Bruno secretly climbed up to the window and saw his father showing them a documentary. The film showed the happy lives of Jewish people, and Bruno thought that they were able to live such good days all thanks to his father's efforts. Just as his sister had said, his father was doing things that benefited others in the country. Little did he know this was counter-propaganda material to motivate German soldiers. Seeing Jewish people living comfortable lives was precisely why they must always be vigilant at a time when they themselves had been persecuted. After the officers finished watching the documentary, Bruno rushed into his great father's arms, while his mother, watching from upstairs, showed a look of contempt. What surprised Bruno was that, for revealing a state secret, the lieutenant was demoted. He was even sent directly to the front lines of the battlefield. To express his remorse to Shmuel, Bruno brought toys to find him several times. But for 2 consecutive days, there was no sign of Shmuel. Although they belonged to two opposing peoples, in Bruno's innocent heart, he always considered Shmuel a friend. It wasn't until the third day that Bruno saw him under the iron mesh. He only saw Shmuel sitting on the ground, his head bowed, his spirits low. Bruno wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. When looked up, he discovered a wound on his right eye. Bruno expressed his regret for what had happened that day. Unexpectedly, didn't hold a grudge and instead generously accepted Bruno's apology. The two little friends were back to how they were before. Bruno often brought delicious food for and played chess with Bruno. The two children, with such different identities and circumstances, looked incredibly harmonious in this moment. But just as Bruno found a new playmate, his father had other plans. Seeing his mother's mental state worsening every day, even to the point of slight madness, father decided to send them back to their grandfather's hometown. Bruno went to find Shmuel one last time, but before he could say goodbye, said he couldn't find his father. Upon hearing that Bruno was leaving tomorrow, hoped he could come inside to help him find his father. And to make up for last time, Bruno agreed to request without hesitation, even treating it as an exciting expedition mission. Bruno discovered that the soil under the iron mesh was very soft, so he could easily dig a hole to crawl through, with just an iron shovel. And to avoid prying eyes, decided to bring him a set of striped pajamas tomorrow. Before leaving, didn't forget to tell Bruno to remember to bring him a big sandwich tomorrow. That night, Bruno was too excited to sleep and also tossed and turned all night. Early the next morning, Bruno had already prepared the sandwich. He took the iron shovel and ran quickly towards the farm. Mole also arrived on time. He put the striped pajamas on himself, but Bruno discovered that the sandwich he had brought had fallen somewhere. There was no time to delay. Quickly took off the striped pajamas for Bruno to put on. Then Bruno took the iron shovel and started digging the hole. Mother had finished packing the luggage, but couldn't find any sign of Bruno in the house. By now, Bruno had finished digging the hole, and his small body quickly crawled through. Immediately led him on the journey to find his father. But when Bruno entered the farm, he discovered that the scene inside was completely different from his imagination. Then Shmuel led him into a room. He only saw that the cramped room was packed with Jewish people in striped pajamas, their faces pale and lifeless like living dead. With the sound of a gunshot, the people in the room were driven out. The two children were forced into the middle, not knowing where the soldiers would take them. From the crowd of people walking, one could see they were all old, young, and disabled people incapable of labor. Mother discovered Bruno was missing and immediately went out to look. At the warehouse door in the backyard, his sister found her brother's dropped sandwich. Mother then realized something had happened to Bruno. She rushed into the meeting room and told Ralph that their son was missing. And so all the soldiers rushed out to search. When they used a wooden post to break down the small back door, Mother and sister saw and hurriedly followed. At that moment, a heavy rain began to fall from the sky. The soldiers herded them along the road. Just as everyone was being led into a bunker, Bruno thought they were going there to shelter from the rain. Shortly after, the soldiers ordered them to take off their clothes. A Jewish man even comforted himself. "Don't worry, it's just a shower." Bruno didn't think much of it, thinking they would all be showering in the rain soon, so he started taking off his clothes as well. Unexpectedly, the soldiers herded them into a sealed room and shut it. He only saw a crowd of naked Jewish people packed inside. Next, a German soldier wearing a gas mask poured an unknown, flammable substance inside. Then, from outside the sealed iron door, tragic screams immediately erupted. Ralph immediately ran to the labor camp. Looking at the black smoke hovering in the air, he screamed like a madman, yelling, "Run!" As soon as his mother reached the outside of the wire fence, her emotions instantly collapsed. She clutched Bruno's clothes, sobbing uncontrollably in the rain, and Ralph stood there in despair. He never thought that heaven would use this way to punish him for his criminal acts. Outside, the quiet morgue was hung full of striped pajamas. Bruno had to pay a heavy price for this. The heart can never find peace. Good is rewarded with good, and evil with evil is the law of karma. But the sacrifice of a child to expose the crimes of war is unacceptable. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this movie? Please comment below. See you in the next movies.